Sometimes, as digital scrapbookers, we have some journaling we'd like to put on our layout, but we don't necessarily want that journaling to be readable or visible to anybody when we post to social media or to an online gallery. Hi, I'm Vicki Robinson, and I have got a really quick and easy way to help you disguise your journaling on your digital scrapbooking page. Let me show you how. As digital scrapbookers, our goal in creating pages is to record our precious memories and the stories of our lives and that of our families. So clearly, when we're looking for a font to record those stories, we want to find something that is very easily readable, that's very legible, that when you share those pages to your friends or have them printed in a book, it's really easy to read the story. But sometimes that story that you want to record is a little personal. And while it may be okay to have it visible on a printed page for your friends or in your own book, when you post to an online gallery for sharing, you may not want that text to be legible. Maybe some things in there that are sensitive and you'd like to protect, but you still don't want to change the integrity of your page. And then there's the instance where you're doing an art journaling page, such as this one, where the journaling may be intensely personal. It's an integral part of your page. It's important to the page, but you don't necessarily want that journaling to be visible to the world as you post in an online gallery or perhaps share on Insta. So let me show you a trick for doing your journaling both ways so that it is legible when you want it to be, and then another version of it that is not quite as legible for when you want to post online. And this is such a simple trick. You're going to be bashing your head thinking, trying to figure out why you didn't come up with this sooner, because it really is a kind of a no-brainer. And the answer is, instead of spending all your time looking for a font that's very readable, you want to do the opposite. You want to look for a font that is not legible. Let me show you what I mean. I'm over here on DaFont.com. If you're a digital scrapbooker, I'm sure you're very familiar with DaFont.com. They offer a lot of great free for personal use fonts. And one of the things I like most about this site is it categorizes their fonts in different sections. I already know that I want to look for a script font, and more importantly, I want to look for a handwriting font. Handwriting fonts tend to be very ornate, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. So let's go ahead and click handwritten. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of fonts here. I want to narrow my search down a little bit. I want to be able to see what these fonts are going to look like in the text I want to use. So did you know that you could actually replace this standard sample text with your own? There's a little preview area right here, and if you click in there and enter your text, I already have some, so I'm going to go ahead and just paste that in. I can tell DaFont that I want to see, let's look at 100 fonts. Let's make them large so that you can see what they are. And then I'm going to head and click submit. And now the text, part of the text that I'm going to use here is as a sample, and I can really get an idea of what these fonts look like in my own text. Here's what I'm looking for. I want very ornate fonts. I want fonts that are difficult to read right off the bat. The more ornate a font, the more difficult it is to read. You would never use one of those fonts in typical journaling on a digital scrapbooking page where you want your text to be read by the viewer. But in this, for our purposes, we're looking for something that's difficult to read. So you can see how this is a pretty kind of cool one. It says Alexander lettering. And you can see that they've got all these swooshes here, but the more swooshes and loops and prettiness a font has, the more difficult it's going to be to read as you're journaling. Here's a good one. This one says, taken by vultures. A cute name. But if you look here, see all these extra lines here? See how a little hard that is to read? You find yourself staring at it really hard. So we want to start out with a font that is difficult to read right up front. And here, we're getting better. These are all too clear. We don't want that. Good journaling fonts on a regular scrapbook page, but not for our purposes. Here, I like this one here, Amalfi Coast. That's very pretty. Very pretty font here. And here's one that's really getting out of hand. See how these are spread out and there's all these little loops? I've already done some research here, and I'm going to come in and search for one of the fonts that I found. I'm not sure how to say this. Southera, Southera maybe, and search. And look at this. It's a gorgeous font. I absolutely love it. It's impractical when you want your font to be your message to be read, but for our purposes it's really great. So this is one that I would try and download and test. Now, to use one of these fonts, click on the download link. Remember, they're for personal use. Click on download. The zip file will be in your downloads directory or whatever directory you have specified for your downloads. You want to unzip it or uncompress it, and then use your normal method for installing fonts on your computer. Usually you can just double click on the font file and it will install, and then it will be available in Photoshop and Photoshop Elements. The other set of fonts that I found that are kind of cool, they all start with Jellyka. I'm assuming that's the name of the author. Here you can see that. But look at this deliciousness here that you're seeing here. See all these loops and swooshes? Really kind of cool, and you wouldn't really be able to read text if it was for your regular scrapbooking page, but for our purposes, really kind of cool. So I have already gone ahead and downloaded some of these fonts, and I wanted to show you how you can use them for your journaling. I'm here in the full version of Photoshop. This I'll show you in Photoshop Elements too. The processes that we're going to go through are basically identical, but I wanted you to see them in both. This is the journaling on that page that I showed you earlier that I would like to have a little bit disguised. It's just in a regular Arial font. Now, to modify my text that I've already typed, I'm going to activate my text tool with T on the keyboard and click inside my text box, and then Control A on a PC, Command A on a Mac to select all the text. Now I'm going to come up here into my font selector, and rather than scroll through all my fonts, I'm going to type the first couple of letters of the font. Let's try Southera, S-O-U-T-H, and here it is, Southera Regular. And let's make it a little bigger so you can see it, and then commit that change. So this is really cool right as it is. I might be able to use Southera because we're looking at it magnified and in 30-point text. On your journaling page, of course, on your scrapbook page, it's going to be something like 10 or 12. So you can imagine once you see this text on your page, it's going to be virtually illegible right off the bat with nothing else that we need to do to it. Let me undo that, Control or Command Z to undo. And once again, with my text tool active, click inside the text box, Control or Command A, and let's try one of these Jellykas, J-E-L-L-Y. And one of my favorites is this Bees Antique Handwriting Regular. And again, I'm going to make it larger so that you can actually see it on the screen. And then commit this change. Look at all these swooshes. Now you can still read what the text says. So I wanted to show you how once we've got a nice swooshy text and we love the way that it looks as it is, we can make some modifications to this text to really make it difficult to read. So once again, with my text tool active, I'm going to click somewhere in the text, Control or Command A to select it all. And now I'm going to come up here and choose from the window menu, choose character. In this little pop-up dialog box here, we have some fine tuning we can do with this text. And what I'm looking for, my cute little trick, is to look to what shows you, it looks like it says VA. This is if you hover over it, you'll see set tracking for selected characters. Remember, all my characters are selected here, so whatever I change this to is going to affect all my text. Right now it's set to 0, but I'm going to use my little scrubber here. I'm going to click down and use the scrubber, and I'm scrubbing to the left. You see that there's a minus here in this number. And watch what happens. The text letters, the letters of the words, are getting closer and closer and closer together. Let's leave this at a minus 100, and I'm going to accept that and then zoom in here so that you can see what this looks like. See how just by making that simple adjustment to the tracking, we are able to make that text, that journaling, basically illegible. I told you that this was really simple and sort of head-slappingly easy. Why didn't we think of doing this before? Now, I should also point out that you could, rather than using the scrubber, you could actually just type a number in here. The minus number is the key. So if we wanted to go really crazy, make sure nobody could ever read it, no matter how long they stared at it, we could say go to minus 200. Let's see what that looks like. Oops, what did I forget to do? I forgot to select my text. So I'm going to click inside my text box with the tool. It changed it. Now, clearly, we wouldn't want to do that, right? We clearly wouldn't do that. Let's select all the text. Control or Command A to select all that text. And let's move it back to, let's say, minus 120. Oops, not 2020. 120. 120, Vicki. And then go ahead and commit that. See how simple that is? I've got a couple of other font samples here for you that I wanted to show you. One cool one that you might try is Signature X. Let's see what that looks like. So come back to my text, Control or Command A to select all of the text, and let's type in up here, and this is Signature Demo Regular, and say OK. Now, I wanted to point out something. I'm going to accept that text, select that change. Notice here, this looks very cool, and I would love this font, except that, see these little X's here? That means whatever character was in my actual text does not exist in my font. It was probably an M dash, that elongated hyphen. So if I'm okay with that, I can just go ahead and delete this right out of there. Just delete that one character, because you don't want people to read this anyway. So whether the punctuation is correct or not doesn't matter. So what do you think? Isn't that really cool? Now, I wanted to explain to you that the way you would make this happen with the least amount of disruption to your page is go ahead and have one layer on your page with the text the way you want it to be when you print. If you're going to print it for a book, and of course you want your story to be visible to the world, go ahead and have one layer that is the text the way you want it, then duplicate the layer, right mouse click and say duplicate layer and say OK. And on the duplicated layer, that's where you can change the font to whatever you want to make it less legible. And then that's the text layer that you leave active when you save your file for sharing online. Now let me show you all of this in Photoshop Elements. I'm over here in Photoshop Elements 2022. These steps would work in any version of Photoshop Elements. Now we're going to do the same thing that we did in the full version of Photoshop. I'm going to activate my text tool with pressing the T key. Place my cursor anywhere in the text, Control or Command A to select it all, and then down the font selector in Photoshop Elements is down at the bottom. So we're going to, again, I'm going to start typing in the first couple letters of my font that we're going to look for. Let's use Jellica again, Jelly, and that's going to, let's just take one of these other ones. Why don't we try St. Andrew's Queen Regular. Of course, I might need to make that much bigger so that you can see it. And let's apply that change. So you can see again, this has got not as many loops, but it's kind of a very sort of old-fashioned kind of font. Let's see what happens. We're just going to test this. Let's see what happens if we change the settings on the font. Let's tweak them. T to activate my text tool, click inside, Control or Command A to select everything, and we want to come down to the tracking section. Remember, I said tracking. Now, again, it's already set to 0. There are some predefined, preset tracking here that we can do. Remember, we want to go to minus. We want to make things smaller. So we're going to go to minus. Let's try that. Minus 100. And do a check mark. And let's zoom in. We can still see that. Probably too much if you really wanted to hide your journaling. Once again, T to activate the text tool, Control or Command A. And once again, even though it had these presets, we can still do minus. Let's do minus 160. Activate that, and there you go. I had one other I wanted to show you. In my font samples, I had one called Blue Signature. I really like the way that looks, and it would look good on a really good regular scrapbooking page where you're not trying to hide the journaling. Let's see what happens when we try to use this over here to disguise my journaling. Control or Command T to select my text box. Control or Command A to get all that text. And let's just type in Blue Signature Personal Use is what it's called. Now, it's going to come up in 30-point text, and I already had tracking of minus 160, so that's what it's remembered. Let's just go ahead and see how that looks. Oh, that's kind of cool. I love all those loops. Probably still a little bit too legible, so T to get the text tool, Control or Command A. Let's move this, so let's just say minus 200 and see what happens. And accept that. There you go, that's pretty illegible. Of course, you can play with these settings to get it to something that you are comfortable with if it's sensitive journaling. I think my point was here, you can still have a pretty font and that is a nice, interesting text element on your page, but is illegible to people in galleries and any place where you don't want that text to be read. The key is to look for a very elaborate and ornate font that is difficult to read on your screen right off the bat. Choose one of those and you'll have fabulous success with this technique. I told you it'd be quick and easy. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss my other digital scrapbooking tips, and leave me a comment below if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.